Welcome to the J.D. Levy and Associates Calibration Point podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share. If there are topics that you would like to see explored, please send them to us through our website at jdlevyassociates.com.
Welcome, everyone, to the Calibration Point podcast show. I wanted to take this episode and take a little different bent on the topic, just in light of a recent book that I've released called Merged, The Culture of Change in Organizations. And I've had a lot of requests to look at possibly unpacking this a little bit deeper in a podcast, talking about how individuals respond to change in culture, which is a lot of what the book that I have that's coming out is referencing. So I wanted to spend this episode just as a thought jogger for everybody who's going through some kind of culture change in their organizations, and at least begin to throw out a foundation that maybe you can begin to use whether you ever read my book or any other book on culture change and mergers in nonprofit organizations, but to start to think about a framework that you could begin evaluating your own organizations as you look at the changes coming in this, what appears to be pretty unprecedented year for the nonprofit sector. In all the time that I've spent researching and studying culture change and nonprofit mergers and others who are far greater experts than me in this field, it always led me back to the four choices that individuals make as they experience significant change in an organization. Those four choices were that individuals chose to adapt to the change that they were experiencing, meaning that they were okay with it, or they were willing to submit to it, and so they adapted to accept the changes in the culture of the organization that they were a part of. A second group or choice was the ability or willingness to blend in, meaning that they still stayed true to some of the concerns or their own comfort zones that were in the change that an organization was going through and what they experienced before the change. But for the common good and for their desire to create more unity, they were willing to not only adapt to the changing culture, but they were instead willing to blend in some of their own priorities into the new cultural focus and create a bit of a subculture as they were beginning to experience this change. So the first choice was that individuals could adapt. The second choice was that individuals could blend parts of the old and the new together and create a bit of an anomaly inside the organization, which was not necessarily a bad thing, but needed to be understood. A third choice that we've seen and experienced and research shows us is that people will resist. So these are individuals, as they go through change, that instead of adapting or instead of blending, they will resist the change and become loud voices. They may decide to completely call it out as rebels. They may decide to just voice their concerns and not adapt or blend, but really drive in their priorities, their turf, their focus, and to create dissonance. In this case, they can still create another subculture like those that are blending, but this is one that's built that is more vocal and is a little bit more thorny because they're not set out to necessarily blend. They're set out to create what they want in this changed organizational state. And then a fourth response is for people to exit, in meaning that individuals just choose to leave altogether. And why they leave is often rooted in their sense of a breakdown of the things that they value the most within the organization before it experienced the change. One of the number one things that we recommend and that others in the field have seen to be highly effective as well is giving very full understanding of why an organization is going through change before we ever venture down the road. When we've gone back and interviewed individuals who have exited organizations through major change or through mergers, one of the number one reasons they exit is because of this sense of breakdown in the things that they valued. But when we ask them what would have changed that, their perspective is often that they needed better understanding of why the change was important to the things they valued most, which typically were driven around the mission and the vision of the organization. So they're basically saying that, hey, we exited because we didn't feel we had good understanding that this was going to create value for the things that we prioritize within the organization. So those four choices were that individuals would choose to adapt, they would choose to blend the new and the old, they would choose to resist the new and create their own kind of rebel focus within the culture, or they would just exit altogether. There's a wonderful research and book out called Exit, Voice, and Loyalty by Hirschman. I believe it was 1969. Don't quote me on the time on that. I think it was the late 60s. And it's a phenomenal book that tracks, and his research tracked these choices in culture. What causes individuals to exit, what causes individuals to voice, and what causes individuals to become loyal. As an organization is going through change, understanding these choices becomes really important to beginning to ground in the desired culture that we want in the after state of any kind of major organizational change, whether that's merging two organizations, whether that's creating a new team, creating a new focus, a new strategy, whatever that might be. Having this understanding to how people process change, and that change is a continuous and fluid thing, is really very important anytime we're going through major organizational shifting. One of the things that we have found, and as I've found as I studied this topic and experienced and worked through mergers in the nonprofit sector, which is my specific focus, is that this process of adapt, blend, resist, and exit is actually a cycle and not a one-time affair. That individuals, as an organization continues to grow, are constantly processing through this cycle of adapt, blend, resist, and exit. And as organizations grow through the growth cycle, there are disruptions that will cause and can trigger an individual to knowingly and sometimes unknowingly process. Are they going to adapt to the changes that they're seeing? Are they going to blend the new and the old? Are they going to resist and create pockets within the organization that are truly vocal against the change? Or are they just simply going to exit? And the people who exit are those that typically, what we have found, are often the most loyal to the mission and vision, because they were the ones that felt that there was a breakdown in the mission and vision. But again, as I mentioned earlier, could have been changed if they had better information on the front end. So what do you do with this? An easy approach is to make sure that we are always focused on the why. And the reason I wanted to share this topic is because I've had a lot of requests. I've seen a lot of challenges around change this year, just even so far in this year. But I've also spent a lot of time talking about connecting people at the why. Organizational change is rooted at the why. People need to connect at the why. And the nonprofit sector is built on the why. Loyalty doesn't come from the what and the how. Loyalty to a cause, loyalty to an organization comes from me being a part of the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Then, what are we trying to achieve? And then thirdly, how are we going to get there? Loyalty and connection start first at the why. Unfortunately, in the nonprofit sector, and maybe in others, but we spend a lot of time focused on the what and a lot of time focused on the how, but we don't always spend enough time focused on the why. And when I can connect someone's heart and passion to the why, it's amazing how resilient organizations become and how resilient individuals become and the growth that can happen. This also translates outside the organization to our donors and to our volunteers. When we can then begin to cast the vision of the why, and as we go through major organizational bumps and changes, continually connect our donors and volunteers to the why, we foster an environment that lets them connect at a place of great passion, sacrifice, and loyalty. So while the focus of this short reminder on organizational change is about how individuals adapt to culture, I want to end with the focus that what really matters is that we're connecting the why of who we are in our organizations and the cause and the movement that we are about, and connecting that to the why of individuals who champion with us. Spend a lot of time asking the question why, and then cascade that down to everything that we do within our organizations so that we can connect people at the why. It's amazing how strong organizations become when we connect individuals at the why. I hope you look forward to spending this year really focused on the why. And until next time, this is Jamie signing off with the Calibration Point Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point Podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.